I'm currently between jobs, and I drive an Uber to pay the bills. One day, after dropping off a passenger to the outer parts of the city, I stopped at an empty intersection. I got a sudden urge to run the red light, so I checked to my left, nothing, then turned to my right, and there he was. Sitting next to me in the passenger seat, an elderly man wearing a hospital gown. His skin was semi-translucent and his blue veins were branching out in minute detail, thin white hair covering his balding head, and his eyes had a shade of faded gray. I stumbled through the door and took a few steps back. The man was slightly hunched over, hands over his knees, looking out the front windshield. I tried talking to him, yelling at him. I opened his door and went to grab his arm, and my hand went right through. I also was the only one seeing him. I drove to the nearest hospital and asked for help to get him out. Ended up taking a breathalyzer test. My car got cursed by a ghost, and he wasn't going anywhere. I had to keep driving my Uber, but I always kept him in the corner of my eye. I would look at the passengers in the rearview mirror to see if they noticed him. No one did. And soon I started to ignore he was there. Then came the day I picked up the man in the suit, not my usual passenger. He was heading to the airport, and the traffic was locked. I was looking for any opening to make sure he didn't miss his flight. It's then that I noticed something that made a chill go down my spine. The old man has turned and started looking at the suit sitting in the back. It's been 3 months, with him not moving an inch. And now he started to crawl past me to the back seat. A honking horn startled me, but a kick to the back of my seat snapped me out of it. I turned to see the suit with his mouth wide open, and the ghost crawling down his throat. When the ghost shifted his shoulders through the suit's mouth, his jaw was dislocated. I jumped out to open the back door, just in time to see the feet sliding down. The man in the suit was dead. I've never seen that many police officers before. They didn't stop questioning me until they saw the dash cam footage that proved I had nothing to do with it. And that was it. I still don't know who that ghost was or where did he go. But I sure as hell don't know why that man asked for an Uber. You'd think an insurance company exec can do better. There was definitely something very wrong with the passenger in the next carriage. The train journey was proving to be a long, drawn-out affair, peppered with unexplained delays and social ineptitude on the part of my fellow travelers. The clearly signposted quiet zone seldom lived up to its name, and this trip was no exception. In fact, my ears were still ringing from the atonal duet of both an unhappy baby and a pair of overly chatty teenagers who believed that their conversation was something that the whole carriage wanted to hear. Mercifully, this would all be over soon as the train gently came to a stop at the penultimate platform. As the majority of passengers got off, that's when I noticed him. He was in the next carriage, sitting alone at a table facing in my direction. He was reading a book, the cover of which I couldn't make out. It looked to have a picture of a mouth on the cover and some scribbles, maybe words above it. The odd part was that he looked to be speaking out loud. Now this was not an issue in itself after all. He wasn't sitting in the pseudo-quiet zone with me, and was free to make as much noise as he wanted, within reason. Plus, in my 10 years as a private investigator, I had seen far more disturbing acts and would continue to do so. After all, that's why I was on this train to Dark Plains in the first place, to investigate some kind of bizarre yearly tradition affecting a number of families there. Anyway, this gentleman, reading out loud, wasn't completely at odds with normal conduct. However, there was something off about it. then it hit me. He looked to be having a conversation rather than reading. Was he rehearsing a monologue, perhaps? It was then that another thing became apparent. He was not turning pages, but merely staring at the cover whilst in dialogue. After watching this unfold for a matter of minutes, he suddenly stopped, got up, and began to walk away. Perhaps to answer a call of nature, maybe to get a coffee. It didn't matter. I was going to get a look at that book. I got up from my seat and strolled towards his carriage. It was as empty as mine, which made this covert act a cakewalk. The book was face down on the table. Tentatively, I reached down and turned it over. It was now face up. I mean that literally. The mouth on the cover was real. The scribbles above were a pair of closed eyes. They opened almost immediately. The mouth's lips curled back, revealing needle-like teeth. It said one thing: Gabriel, my name. I dropped it immediately and headed back to my seat. A while later, the man returned, nodded at the book in acknowledgement, then stared at me, unblinking. At the last stop, I quickly gathered my things and got off. Bookman followed. We opened the closet door. Inside were presents, adorned in the same wrappers and bows that we see under the tree every Christmas morning. Told you, Santa isn't real. Same with the Tooth Fairy and Easter Bunny, Devin told her. Donna looked like her world was just eviscerated. Sorry, just have to tell you the truth, I responded. Well, part of it was to tell her the truth. Most of the reason why was so she would stop constantly bragging about how Santa gives me more presents. I must be at the top of the nice list. We left her in the basement to let it all sink in while Devin and I played Smash Brothers. The next morning, Dad was out working, like usual. He left us our usual breakfast of soup on the table, as he always did. Before I could grab a spoon, Donna grabbed my hand. Don't eat it. Poisoned. The fuck? She pulled out a worn, leather-bound book and flipped to a page. Look. The page had a lot of weird words, like alchemical, illusionary, and masking. Basically, it described what looked like instructions to some potion. My eyes felt like they were being peeled for a moment. Then the house looked different. Dry, crusty, fluids surrounding the front door, every color of the rainbow. They all formed a trail to the basement door. As I opened the door, the scent of rotten meat assaulted me. Inside, tiny people with wings, nailed through the chest to the walls. Further, in the grime-encrusted cellar, we found more corpses. Fucking unicorns. Severed unicorn heads piled on the floor. Most of them had their horns ripped out of their skulls, duct-taped to the wall. Small, stout people with pointy ears. Elves. Most of them didn't have skin. One of them, whose face looked like a loose meatball, turned his head towards us. His one bloodshot eye frantically pointed at us. Hjalpa mer. Han toki fingurna amer. Han kemur bradum aftur, he gargled. And then I realized it. Elves, fairies, unicorns, and other creatures of myth were real. And Dad was their fucking Dahmer. I had a fight with my wife. Now I have to shower downstairs. I woke up by a rapping on the door. I got up and kicked several empty beer cans laying around. Did I sleep in the living room last night? David, open the door. A familiar voice called. The buzzing sound through my skull. My head hurts. I staggered to the door, my wife standing crossed-arm waiting. It's 10, David. Not going to work? Sorry, guess I worked late last night. I said, feeling like a loser. Was it work that kept you late, or were you looking for a way to escape? She asked. What was that in her eyes? Disgust? I frowned. What do you mean? Did we have a fight last night? Olivia signed. Just go and wash up already. She said, then walked away. I went to grab my towel from a couch, then head to the guest bathroom. Why don't you shower upstairs? Olivia showed up again. Do you think showers downstairs will solve anything? I looked at her, not sure what she was saying. If we had a fight last night, I don't remember anything. Although, judging from the pile of clothes on the couch, she might be right. Shower upstairs, she repeated, then disappeared again. My heart drummed. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Must be the beer. Only God knows how many I chucked down last night. I dragged my feet up the stairs, feeling nauseous. There was this fear I didn't know what it was. When I turned the knob to my room, a wave of putrid stench hit me, and a buzzing sound grew louder. I opened the bathroom door. There, sprawled across the cold tiles, were the decaying bodies of my wife and my 2 children stacked on top of her. A gaping wound on their necks with dried crimson pool under them. Swarms of flies buzzed, creating a constant maddening hum. I stumbled back against the wall. Images of our argument flashed before my eyes. It hit me like a bullet. I had invested all our savings with a friend, but the bastard betrayed me, leaving me deep in debt. My wife called me a failure. It was ugly and painful. On that very night, I decided to end it all. After they fell asleep, I did it. First, Olivia, then the kids. I swear I was going to off myself too, but I couldn't. Fear paralyzed me. I cried like a baby looking at Olivia's lifeless face. That was when her eyes flipped open. "Do you remember now?" I screamed and blacked out. I woke up by a rapping on the door, a low buzzing sound vibrating in my ears. Did I sleep in the living room last night? "David, open the door." I opened the door and Olivia standing there, crossed-armed. "It's 10, David. Not going to work?" "Sorry, guess I worked late last night," I said. Olivia looked at me. "Was it work that kept you late? Or were you looking for a way to escape?" It still hasn't let me go. I work at a grocery store. Usually, I reach there at 10 a.m. during the peak customer time. But that day, I went at 7 a.m. just to do some paperwork for my salary. I had been accused of not offering good customer support also. I am not a sales guy, but a call center worker who handles customer credit card problems, reviews, and feedback. The store is very big, and I am almost always on phone calls until leaving time. 9 p.m. It's a really hectic job. When I entered, the automatic door opened. I thought someone would be inside since the grocery store opens at 8 a.m. However, no one was there. Complete silence, but all the lights were on. I didn't bother much and went straight to my office. I pulled out a folder, turned around, and froze in shock. The telecommunication lines were in complete disarray, cords tangled and hanging, routers toppled, and broken devices scattered across the floor, as if someone had been searching for something. Totally confused, I thought. When I got in, everything was in place. The outside situation was the same. I called my boss, but he hung up, saying, "Today is a holiday. Please let me sleep." Hey, sir," I replied. My paperwork was left unfinished as worried thoughts swept through my mind. "What if someone broke into the store?" I muttered. "Well, in that case, they would have come inside my office too, but I didn't notice anyone entering," I reassured myself. I closely inspected the area and found footprints, full of mud on the ground. They were so prominent, and I questioned myself, why didn't I notice them at first glance? Damn, am I silly? I now saw them all around the store. I followed them all the way to the end. My head slammed against something. What is it? It was my office door. Full of curiosity, I opened it. The footprints led up to the locked cupboard. I slowly peeked inside to check. For a split second, due to sudden pressure, my head was forced down. And then I saw those steps going backward. I totally froze. Someone had entered and left in my presence. I ran outside and all the lights were cut off. The only thing I could see was my face in the reflection of the grocery gate. It was locked tightly. Then I felt someone walking past me. I looked down and saw those footsteps following me all the way. I felt someone's presence. "Oh my God, who are you?" I exclaimed. A shadow whispered, "You are not alone. I am always with you." Suddenly, the door opened. My legs trembled as I ran out into the daylight. I signed resignation the very next day. Every time I pass by its location, I can feel a cold gaze following me. All I know is that I left something behind, and it still hasn't let me go. I burst into my room, panting and overwhelmed by a toxic flood of sheer hatred and irritation. Fucking Aunt Sonia. How dare she? I get she's from the old country and all that crap, but seriously, taking pot shots at my weight. She obsesses over what I eat. "Another cookie, Sophie?" She rasped at me. I wanted to say something back about her smoking, but Mom shot me that look. And gracefully, I removed myself from the situation. But now I needed my journal like a drowning person needs a throw line. I had taken lifeguarding lessons over summer, and all my metaphors are about drowning. Extended family had invaded our house for 5 days now, and another 2 to go. I was drowning. Cousin Tasha swiveled around in my chair. What the actual hell? Was there no refuge in my own room, my sanctuary now? I stared at my younger cousin, her stupid smirk wider than ever, her feet up on my desk, equal parts comfortable and arrogant. I felt like bashing her over the head. "Wow, this is quite something, Sophie." Only then the fog of rage that had been blinding me lifted, and I realized what she had been doing. Reading my journal. I don't think any spy in the history of spies has ever felt that sinking feeling of despair, horror, and sheer fear when they realized that they had been caught red-handed, that incriminating documents were in the hands of the enemy, and terrible things were about to happen to them, to the extent I did upon realizing Tasha had been reading my journal. My eyes widened, and I could smell the fear coming off me. I knew Tasha could smell it too. That's private. My room is private. I told you that. I croaked. She giggled, a nasty, nasty sound, and twirled her thick blonde hair. "Fun reading," she remarked. Then she glanced down at the pages. "I hate Aunt Sonia. I'd like to push her into the lake, watch her struggle to get out, then go silent as she drowns. Today, she told me to ask Tasha what shampoo she uses, because I get my thin hair from my father's side," she read out loud. "Tasha. It's just a journal. Mental health counselor at school," I burbled. "You want to kill us? Your guests? Your family?" Tasha raised her feet off my desk and got off my swivel chair. I wondered if I could get away with pushing her down, bashing my maths textbook into her temple, and then pretending it was an accident. "You hate us so much." She took a step closer to me, an angelic doll in her party dress and blonde curls. I heard myself whimpering. Then she said, "I hate my mom too. She's awful, isn't she? Let's do it. But your lake idea is too simple. I actually have a much better plan that I've been thinking about a while. I think you'll like it." I exhaled. My daughter keeps telling me someone's in her room. It started 4 nights ago, when my 6-year-old daughter, Emily, woke me up with a blood-curdling scream. "Daddy!" she cried, standing in the hallway, her little body shaking. "There's someone in my room." I didn't stop to ask questions. I ran past her, heart pounding, and flicked on the light. Her room was empty. No shadows in the corner, no shapes hiding under the bed. Still, she clung to me, refusing to let go. "He was standing right there," she whimpered, pointing to the corner of the room. He was smiling at me. I searched every inch of her room, but there was no one there. "It was just a bad dream," I assured her, though the look in her wide, tear-filled eyes said otherwise. That night, I dragged a chair into the hallway outside her door and stayed awake until dawn. The next night, I thought things would be different. They weren't. She screamed again, louder this time. "Daddy! He's back!" I rushed into her room, but once again it was empty. Emily sat frozen on her bed, staring at the same corner. "He's standing there, Daddy," she whispered. "Why can't you see him?" Her words made my stomach drop. I didn't know what to say, so I sat with her until she fell asleep. But as I left the room, I swear I felt the faintest rush of cold air against my neck, as if someone had passed me. Last night, I stayed up in her room, determined to show her there was nothing to be afraid of. At around 2 a.m., the room felt colder, unnaturally so. Emily stirred awake and sat up suddenly, clutching her blanket. "Don't move, Daddy," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Why?" I asked, my throat tightening. "He's not in the corner anymore." I froze, every muscle locking into place. "He's standing right behind you." The town that sleeps before 10 p.m. I live in a town where everyone sleeps before 10 p.m. It has become some kind of custom now. People lock their doors, turn off their lights, and crawl into bed as though their lives depend on it. Even the stray dogs vanish into silence, and the world outside becomes still. As a kid, I'd ask my parents, "Why does everyone sleep so early?" They'd always give me the same answer. "That's just the way it's always has been." But that answer never satisfied me. Why was it the way it's always been? What was so important about sleeping by 10 p.m.? My curiosity grew as I did. There was something wrong about the stillness of our nights. No one ever woke up, not even for a glass of water or to use the bathroom. Once they went to sleep, they were dead to the world until morning. I'd overheard whispers once, conversations among the adults. "He broke the rule," someone had said, "never woke up again." They saw me listening and stopped talking, but the seed of curiosity had already been planted. What really happened after 10 p.m.? One night, I decided to find out. That evening, I followed the routine like always. Dinner at 7, TV until 9, and then to bed. But this time, I pretended to sleep. I lay there with my eyes closed, listening as the town settled into its nightly stillness. At exactly 10 p.m., everything became silent. A silence so heavy, it felt alive. I waited for what felt like hours, though it was probably just 30 minutes. Then, slowly, I opened my eyes. My heart pounded as I sat up, every creak of the bed frame sounding deafening in the oppressive quiet. I tiptoed to my bedroom door and cracked it open. The hallway was empty. I could hear the sound of my own breathing. Slowly, I crept to my parents' room to check on them. They were fast asleep. Their faces were calm and undisturbed. For a while, I just stood there, watching them. But as I turned back toward my room, that's when I felt it. A presence. Not something I could see or hear, but something I knew was there. The air grew colder, pressing down on me like a heavy blanket. The hair on my arms stood on end, and my instincts screamed for me to run. And then I heard it. "Why are you awake?" I froze. My mouth went dry and my limbs felt like lead, but then I thought, it's Mom. It has to be Mom. I felt relief for a moment. but as I turned toward the voice, I noticed my parents' room. The door was still ajar, and I could see them lying in bed, motionless, breathing softly, asleep. If they were asleep, then who? The voice cut through my thoughts, louder this time with anger. "Why are you not sleeping? You were supposed to be asleep." The sound was coming closer. My chest tightened as I turned the corner, and then I saw it. It wasn't my mother, not my father, not anything human. The figure was impossibly tall and thin, its skin stretched taut over its skeletal frame. Its face, or the space where a face should have been, was a void, a swirling black emptiness. "It's all your fault. You should have stayed asleep." Panic overtook me, and I ran. My legs felt like lead. My breath came in sharp gasps, but I didn't stop until I slammed the door of my room shut behind me. The knocking started immediately, loud, violent, relentless. Each blow shook the door, and I pressed myself against it, tears streaming down my face. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the knocking stopped. Silence. For what felt like hours, I stood there, trembling, waiting for the next sound. When nothing came, I thought it was over. I thought I was safe. I opened the door, and that's when I realized something was wrong. The world outside wasn't the same. The air was thick, suffocating, and the walls of the house seemed warped, their colors dull and faded. The clock on the wall caught my eye, and my stomach dropped. The hands weren't moving. It was 10 p.m., and it always would be. I don't know how long I've been here. Days, weeks, years. Time doesn't exist anymore, not in this place. The town is empty now. No parents, no neighbors, no life. Just me, wandering the streets, searching for an escape that doesn't exist. I haven't eaten or drunk anything since that night, yet I'm not dead. I should be dead, but I'm not. My body has changed. I've grown taller, impossibly thin. My skin stretches tightly over my bones, and my reflection in broken glass reveals the truth. My face is gone, replaced by a void, a black nothingness. I don't feel human anymore. The memories of my life before are fading. I've grown angry, angrier with each passing moment, at myself, at the town, at everything. And then, one day, I saw something. A boy. He was small, frightened. I watched as he tiptoed down the hallway, peeking into his parents' room. The sight filled me with rage. "Why are you awake?" The boy froze, his eyes locking onto mine. And in that moment I realized the truth. I wasn't watching him. I was watching myself. And now I understood. I had stayed awake. And now I was the one who ensured no one else ever would.